BBC.
You're listening to Witness with me, Lucy Burns, on the BBC World Service. It's November 1974 and a West German band called Kraftwerk have just released a new album called Autobahn, based on the sounds of the German motorway. They performed on the BBC's technology programme, Tomorrow's World. Frontman Ralf Hütter gave a rare interview to the BBC in 2010.
It had to do with awakening of our cultural situation, being in Germany, in post-war Germany, and finding our own sound.
Drummer Wolfgang Flür.
Even our looking was different. We had no long hair, we didn't wear blue jeans, we had suits on, grey suits, short hair, Engineer musicians more.
Kraftwerk have a name for this. It's Maschinenmusik. The sounds are created at their laboratory in Düsseldorf, programmed, then recreated on stage with the minimum of fuss. This is Autobahn, based, say the group, on the rhythm of trucks, cars and passing bridges heard while driving through Germany.
David Buckley has written a biography of the band, Kraftwerk Publikation.
I remember listening to it for the first time when I was 10 years of age, and here was something that sounded very new, very bright, very confident, and the sound of Autobahn is of being in motion, as if you are on the motorway, and never has being in a car sounded so great and so sexy.
Kraftwerk was formed when students Ralf Hütter and Florian Schneider met in an experimental music course at the Music Conservatory in Düsseldorf. It was a difficult time for West Germany, still struggling to emerge from the shadow of the Second World War and ambivalent about its new place in the world. Drummer Wolfgang Flür spoke to the BBC4 documentary Krautrock in 2009.
We wanted to have something what was so special, What had we else? It was after the war. Germany was completely broken, so also the culture was broken, music especially. We had only Schlager and Volksmusik. It was old-fashioned, it was our parents' music. Nothing for young men in the 60s what could bring us joy,
For us it was a very open space for music, and into this space we were lucky to develop our sounds. We called it Klingklang when we set up our Klingklang studio in 1970 with very basic tape recorders. So we started really from zero.
Wolfgang Flür had been drumming with a band called the Beethovens, playing Beatles songs and American pop, when Ralf and Florian invited him to play with them.
And when I had my first visit to the studio, to the rehearsal room, it was not a studio then. Just some instruments were lying around and some egg cartons were stuck on the wall to make it a little bit like a studio sounding and looking, Anyhow, they had these synthesizers, and I had the chance, the first time in my life, to listen to a sound of a synthesizer. It was astonishing. It broke my heart and my brain,
Last year they removed the last recognizable instrument, a violin, and built these synthetic drums. Each disc gives a different sound. Rolls, bongos, snares, just by completing the contact with the spring steel battens.
And that was just joyful and playful. It was fun more and more. It was like child to have a new toy,
1974's Autobahn was a whole album dedicated to one of the great symbols of modern Germany, the motorway, representing freedom, industry, technological progress, and a source of fascination to Ralf Hütter and Florian Schneider since their early days as musicians.
They crossed the country from east to west, and as every band does, and they had the idea underneath. There were sounds. That's not only even you open the window, you can hear the wind. If you put the hand out, there is another sound. And this is, I mean, you can tell it a genius. That was Ralf's idea. He is a kind of genius, to bring to the radio what others hear as normal and to catch the songs or to reproduce them with any instrument.
But Autobahn wasn't just a serious vision of modern German identity. Fahren, fahren, fahren after Autobahn, drive, drive, drive on the motorway, was also a playful nod to American pop.
They thought it's an ironic play with the fun, fun, fun from the Beach Boys, and they thought it is fun on the Autobahn. It is fun to drive the German Autobahns, you know, and it was, you know, it's still today maybe. We had not a big speed limit then.
The band also developed a distinctive look with smart, sharp suits and short haircuts, cultivating their outsider status. David Buckley.
If you think of what music was like in 1975, it was dominated by authentic rockers with jeans and long hair, and think of Robert Plant or Mick Jagger. But Kraftwerk dressed like bankers. They wore conservative suits, very stylish. They had short hair. They presented themselves more as a kind of classical ensemble rather than a rock group.
Coming from the reality of working with knobs and faders and buttons and keyboards, there's no time for us to jump around, so we're not a dance group. And when we want to dance, then we go to clubs, after-hour clubs.
As their performance style developed, the band's stage shows became more and more austere, starting with the band standing still behind synthesizers. By the late 70s, they sometimes sent mannequins on stage in their place.
I mean, our appearance and our shape was ironic, you know, of course. It might have looked like that we are conservative. Maybe we come from conservative homes, especially Florian. We were so much into our music that we were sometimes astonished what the press told about us, what they wrote, you know, especially in England.
The music press were nonplussed by Kraftwerk, painting them as cold, reclusive, maybe even slightly fascist, and typically German. But fellow musicians were captivated by Kraftwerk's sparse melodies and minimalist beats. David Bowie championed the band in the UK. Their synthesizer experiments were taken up by dance culture, and New York DJs like Africa Bambaataa borrowed Kraftwerk samples in the early days of hip-hop.
When you think of it, their influence is astonishing, that these four middle-class white German men based in Dusseldorf would have a global outreach and a global influence without Kraftwerk and that kind of simple beauty of their melodies and their beats. That arguably would never have been rap or hip-hop, and certainly modern dance music would not have been the same without Kraftwerk.
Kraftwerk have been sampled by everyone from New Order to Coldplay to Jay-Z, and the synthesizer-led electronic music they championed has spread all over the world.
When we tour, we go to clubs in Singapore or in South America. It's everywhere, and that for me is the most encouraging thing that ever happened in my life.
Ralf Hütter ending that edition of Witness with me, Lucy Burns. For more of our history programmes, go to bbcworldservice.com/witness.